Hello, welcome back everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Reaper Pro Tips. I am your host Anne, and there are disembodied hands to thank as well. Quindy, Justin, and John. So, how are you all? I see that we had withdrawal. Don't have withdrawal. You can go back and watch my VODs. Hi Julia. Thank you for the resub. 7 months. Lucky number 7. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Wow, Sentimental. Hi. Nice to see you. Yes, I had a nice long weekend with my parents. Mostly with Mom. Mom and I have a lot in common. So it's nice. It was very nice, actually, to spend time with them. Mom was sick, so she didn't go on the Mexico trip, so I didn't get to see her otherwise, and I wanted to have mom-daughter time. She's getting older, so you know how that goes. So it was a good Friday through Monday is about the right amount of time. You don't kill your parents. You don't quite get to the point where you want to kill your parents, and they don't quite get to the point where they want to kill you. Oh, Robin with the 27 months. Very nice. And Jedi Jared with the 34. Had to top Robin, didn't ya? Thank you for the resubs, everybody. That's awesome. Happy Fat Tuesday. Yeah. Well, hopefully not too fat. I tried to be good eating when I was gone. There may have been some Mexican food, though. May have been some tasty carnitas. Oh, no, Nomad Zeke. Well, you have to watch on your phone. You have an excuse to watch on your phone, then. You can just sit out there in the parking lot, watching on your phone. It's not like they'll ask you to work. Oh, dear. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I suppose work from home is a thing. It's a thing. So I've been thinking about things. Speaking of things, I was thinking about, instead of going black with her corset, going like a leather brown. I thought I was using her as kind of an example in one of my other videos, which is why one of her pants legs is dark blue. But I was thinking of going dark blue with her pants, actually. So we have a couple of options. I could go brown with the bodice and blue with the pants. Or I could go blue with the bodice and brown with the pants. But that's a lot of brown down on here, and I think I want to break it up. And then we can make... But I'm also not sure about the brown bodice against the crossbow. That's the thing. It's like, if we do the brown bodice, then we're going to have to do a black crossbow. She is a rogue, so I kind of am more into the black bodice, I think. I don't know. I go back and forth. Hey. Oh, it is Mardi Gras. Okay. Yeah, I totally missed that. I totally missed that because I was like, we're off in Arizona. Yeah, Julia. Yeah, I mean, my mom kind of like always gives me the look because, of course, I'm the one who moved far away. My brother lives like 20 minutes from her. Not even 15 minutes. My brother and his family. So he's the one with the kids anyway. But I did make a kind of a vow, a life vow, a year or two ago that I was going to visit my family more often. And I've mostly followed through on that, but I may double down. I'm going to go up there in the summertime too. No, orange and pink are the two worst colors you can ever put together. Like, I've seen people make it work on models, but like, it makes me cringe. No themes. We have 2 choices. Yeah, well, we can do the black leather, except keep in mind that black leather on a 28mm doesn't involve a texture, really. Not really. It's just too small. So, I mean, black leather is black leather on 28. The only question is whether you're going to make it shiny or not. Usually on a bodice you wouldn't, but we can. We can make it a shiny black leather. But yeah. Oh no. Leaning toward the cat. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, cat interruptions are pretty big. Hey, lady. So yeah. So we can go black, blue, brown. I guess. And then brown, because we have to make some differential. And there's too much pink on this side, or I would go pink with it. So remember, guys, 2 strong colors on your models. 2. Another one, if you're using complementary colors or you have a lot of neutral, we do have a lot of neutral, so we could use an accent color. But this model is very, very simple. And so we don't really have a place to put an accent color. When you go to a model like Tiefling, who we just finished, this guy, then you've got a lot of places that you can put accent colors, right? And that's what the orange is doing here, because I have these bottles and there's a little bit of it on his skin, and, you know, there are touches of it here and there's touches of it in the freehand, and it gets quite strong on the back. But color theory wise, the most successful models have 2 or 3 strong colors tops. And when you have a very simple model, it's much more likely to be 2 strong colors and neutrals. And this is to keep you out of color trouble, because I hear y'all say that you have a lot of trouble choosing colors, and some of that, even with intermediate painters, is trying to choose too many, flat out. Hello, Kariniko. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Daffodweir. Yes, thanks for the welcome. So yeah, so keep that in mind. Like, we've got this pretty vibrant pink. We're going to go blue with the pants, and I am going to bring them up with more blue. And I probably will make her eyes a brighter blue. So, like, that would be kind of the accent color at that point, would be to make her eyes bright, like a brighter blue, and kind of use that a little bit to highlight the pants. But remember to kind of repeat your colors, right? So that's why I'm not going like green with her eyes, because I could, because it'd be complementary to the violet red. But it would also just be throwing a random color on there for no reason, when I really feel like blue eyes are kind of her. So since I'm doing the blue pants, I can essentially use like the blue I use up here to highlight the pants and bring up the color a little bit brighter. So think about that. Think about when you've got a very simple model, 2 strong colors. In my opinion, 2. With maybe the fact that we're going to do some gold, like the gold buckle here, and maybe brass fittings on the crossbow. And we do have the little hair wrap up there, but I may take that pink. I'm thinking I'm going to take it violet red. I was thinking about it. It's kind of a weave. It's kind of just a braid. And so I feel like I want to repeat the brightest color, which is going to be up top. Does that make sense to everybody? So simple model, keep your color choices simpler, choose 2 that go together fairly well, and work out from there. Use your neutrals, use blacks, use dark browns, use cream colors, use gray. But don't go overboard throwing a lot of colors onto the model, you know, when if you don't have a plan. Essentially, one way to, if we did want to throw more colors onto this model, one way to do that would be to make the leather bodice black, but to highlight it with a different color, like to highlight it with a dark green. But I'm not really looking for, it's not really kind of what I want. I really like interrupting colors with neutrals. So I like to go neutral, color, neutral, color, neutral. I like to alternate. I feel like then you're less in danger of getting clashing colors. And even with a dark green here, if I was highlighting this with a dark green, I feel like I'd be in danger of that. So you go back and forth with this sort of thing. And you know, that's kind of how I'm making decisions here, is I want to alternate neutrals and colors. I don't want to use more than 2 bright colors, because she's a very simple model. With the, like I said, the exception of the gold, that's going to throw a yellow in. Because remember, NMM Gold does throw yellow. If we didn't want yellow on this model at all, then we would essentially go for silver on all of her fixtures. We would go for a neutral metal. But gold does count as yellow. So, all right. That said, I've pontificated enough. Where is a black? I don't even know if I have a real black. I might have to mix one. I so much don't keep, like, real black around anymore. I think my real black is in the other room, sitting around waiting for me to use it to paint bases. But if you ever run into that, mixing blue liner and brown liner, or mixing blue liner and walnut, is a perfectly viable black alternative, because the blue and the brown will mute each other out, and you'll get a more complicated black. Neutrals are black, brown, cream. Yes, white does count, but you have to be careful with white. You want to use it up higher on the model. And I wouldn't use white on this model at all. Do you know why? See if anybody can figure out why. Why would I not use white on this model? Yeah, I don't often use gray because there are colors gray doesn't look good with. But you can use gray. I would always mix another color into it though. Maybe we'll have to, I don't use gray a lot for that reason, but maybe we'll have to do something. No. So I wouldn't use white on this because we are depending on the contrast here to pull attention to her face. Right? And that's pretty much the closest thing to white we've got right now, right? Is the light fur, the really light cream colored fur on her face. If you add white to another part of the model, then that white is going to pull the attention, right? Because it's the brightest, lightest thing on the model. It's the lightest thing. And it will essentially de-emphasize and pull attention away from the face here because it's so light. And the light thing is going to pull attention. And so it essentially will make all of these, right now we're drawing attention because of the contrast between light and dark here. But if we made this bodice white, you'd look at the bodice first and you'd look at her face second. And that's not what we want. We want to put attention into her face and expression, and we want people to look at that first. The bodice doesn't matter. It's just like dressing, literally dressing. You want the action and the face to read first. So yeah, so essentially putting like, that's another reason not to use a lot of like a bright yellow here for the bodice. Because it just pulls attention away from the thing that you wanted. Right now, part of the reason I'm using this really light cream, other than that it's suitable for the hair, is that that makes this the lightest thing on the model, and with the dark markings next to it, it kind of counts as freehand. It pulls the eye. Tight detail will pull the eye. But the minute you put something big and white here, that's not going to count anymore because it's not the lightest thing on the model, and it's not the highest contrast. Does that make sense? Remember, all I'm looking for is to pull attention here. I want some people to look here first. Then they can look at other things around the model and, you know, the overall cool. But I want them on the face. For a character, this is so important. There's a reason, Ed discovered this early on, there's a reason why models with helmets don't sell. And it's because people don't like not seeing the face. They want to see the face. So play to them. And make the face, you know, a focal point on your miniature. And then, you know, the cool swords and action and weapons and outfit can follow. But you always want to try to pull attention up to the expression of the figure and the you know, the kind of it tells you what kind of character it is, right? The face is a large part of that. Brown, I would go brown then Turgeon. Unless I decided I wanted I wanted more rose, but the rose doesn't really fit with me. So I'd have to kind of think about the belt and what I wanted to do. But belts, I never go not neutral with belts. Like, it's always gonna be a brown or a black, usually. I mean, I'd say 99.9% of the time. Because belts don't matter. They're not important. I would maybe make an exception on a bard if he's got a very, very fancy outfit. Like, say he's got a red and yellow alternating outfit. Then I could see, like, the shirt being yellow and the red and the belt being red, right? If it makes sense for the character, or a courtesan, say, you know, then you're going to maybe have a cummerbund or something like that. It makes sense to make it a color. But in a working character like this, an adventuring character, I wouldn't bother putting fancy colors on the belt. The belt is like just not important to the character at all. So always ask yourself, what is important to convey this character, right? What says the most about this character? And if it's a detail that really is just there to hang a belt pouch off of, then don't make it important. If it's a brown bodice and black belt, then not really. I mean, a tiny bit here. But remember, the butt of the crossbow here is metal. See it? So that will essentially give you a springing off point. When it's things like that, sometimes you have no choice but to kind of conflict. But again, it's like, yeah, I go back and forth. It's more likely that yeah, black bodice, brown belt, brown crossbow, but I've got this fixture here to make metal and this to make metal. So they're not really going to conflict much. Plus you've got wood grain on this crossbow. That's detail. That's texture. And so it kind of reads like freehand, and that means the weapon is still going to get plenty of attention. Trip was good, Twisted Oma. Talked about it earlier. A little bit. It is kind of a bad thing. I wouldn't want it to blend. I would make it much darker or much lighter. Probably much darker. Because again, the light is going to get us into trouble with the face. But yeah, I try not to double down on a bunch of neutrals unless that's the point of the character. If you're painting something and you want kind of that sepia tone, but maybe you want one color in it, then going with all browns and making it all work together. But if you're going to do that, you need to plan it out from the beginning. If you're going to go with all earth colors and browns, you need to know what your colors are and what you're doing with them from the beginning, because that takes contrast to pull off. And so in that case, you have to be ready to alternate light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, because otherwise you're not going to pull out your details. You can't use color in that case. Everything is brown. Scottish sunshine. Well, yeah, it is March. So the daffodils need some sunshine. But yeah, so I wouldn't want the browns to blend together, Turgeon. I think that actually is a problem, because you don't want it all to blend together. You don't want the bodice to look like it's part of her fur. Remember, these are small miniatures, so we don't have a lot other than color and light and dark. We can't use a ton of texture, so it can be hard to differentiate. If somebody is walking up to your miniature or looking at it on the table, and you've got brown, 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 and then brown, they might for a minute wonder, what's going on with that character. Like, it won't read quite clearly, and you want it to read clearly because 28 millimeter. Like, could you do it? If I was going to do the bodice in brown, if I decided to go through with that, except somebody said they would prefer black leather, so I'm going to go with my initial gut instinct. But if we did this in brown, we'd start with walnut. We'd start as close to black as we could, and then we'd bring it up. And that would differentiate it from the fur, where we started as more of a middle color, shaded it down, and brought it up. And that's enough, really, because then you've got mid, dark. We don't really have a lot of light on this character because we're trying to bring out contrast with the fur texture and her patterns. And that's fine. Like, the face is still going to be the lightest, brightest thing on the model. But yeah, so the fur here is going up to a light cream, so technically the fur reads as kind of a combo of mid, dark, and light. And the clothes, I'm going darker. Because again, rogue. Except for the pretty blouse. Because I believe rogues and assassins can wear pretty pink blouses if they want to. After all, when you wash the bloodstains out, they're pink, right? So then why not wear pink? I don't see a problem with this. Right, exactly, to surf. That's a good point. You got to remember the contrast, right? That's why I tend to use like one contrasting. I tend to use a lot of darks, but I bring them up to a fairly high highlight, depending on what they are. Like if I do an assassin or a rogue. Unless, of course, it's a halfling assassin, and then it's just totally all pink and purple. Because why not? Bottom line, guys, contrast is king. Contrast is king. And contrast means different. So when you think about making things the same, brown and brown, question yourself and remember you need contrast. So that means one of those things needs to go light and the other dark, or one needs to go mid and the other dark, or light and mid. But you need to think in those terms, like when you're using a lot of the same types of colors. Bring what up to white? Oh, the dark colors? Not up to white maybe, but up to lighter so that you can get contrast on various things, but it's got to be in keeping with the material. I don't belong to the highlighted all up to white at school anymore. That was the 90s, guys. That was the 90s. We're not going back to the 90s. I wasn't a big fan of the 90s. Where is my bottle of water? There it is. So we're mixing up a black because my pure black is in the other room, and also I tend to mix my blacks anyway. I should certainly hope if he got you a room at the Embassy Suites that you would let him stick around. I mean, sounds kind of a winner to me. So when you mix walnut and blue liner, and I've done a 50-50 mix here, you come up with something that is pretty much black. Where is my base? Where did my big black base go? Oh, no. Oh, there it is, hiding. It's hiding, but we need it to show color. So if I take a little bit of water, kind of show you guys the color, it's pretty much black. And this is because both blue liner and brown and walnut brown have a lot of black in them. It is a little bit bluish, just a tiny touch cold, which is great. I prefer that. So mixing blue and brown is a great way to create an interesting black. It's not a dead black, which is what I like about it. It's got color in it. Hi, Grim. Well, it's not even that you're old. It's just, there's still a lot of people that ascribe to the, highlight everything up to white approach to make it stand out on tabletop. I don't believe that you need to highlight it all the way to white, and I don't think you should highlight it all the way to white, because I like to work on more realistic textures and stuff. Even on 28, if you highlight everything up to white, what you're trying to tell people is that it's all shiny. Which with Space Marines works. With everything else, not so much. So I thinned this just a little. Again, it's a 50-50 blue liner and brown liner mix. Don't worry, the pants will come up brighter. I was just messing around with a blue the other day, and I needed an example for a video. Oh, hey, it's the 1st. I need to put up my YouTube videos today. Move them to public. I'm going to put that on my to-do list before I forget. So remember, guys, this is a good segue. I have a YouTube. Videos to YouTube. And if you are not on my Patreon, then you can get a bunch of Anne material on my YouTube, my Painting Big YouTube, which I think is all one word. I think we discovered last time that it was all one word, if you search for it on the YouTubes. And Quindy also has a link for you. But I'm doing a new series for beginner painters, like painting fundamentals pretty much. So if you need some help with your fundamentals, or you want to kind of just do a refresher, then go over and watch them. They're pretty short videos. I try to keep them as short as I can while still being thorough in my treatment of the topics. We've got one on getting a smooth base coat. We've got one on applying washes correctly. We've got one on doing mixing your own washes. And I just did one on my top 5 tips for new painters, and also additives. What are additives? And then this month we'll dive in to lining, my favorite thing to use on small models. So you can see how it's thinner. See how it's kind of see-through on the bone? And that's the blue liner, right? The fact that we're using a liner means that we're not getting as high coverage. But I don't really mind that, especially not on black. I can always, it kind of shows me where the highlights are. And it lets me see details still. So I'm going to go over, I like the look of it, so I'm going to go over, and I'll probably just make the pants a slightly stronger blue. I'll need to worry about that a little bit. I don't want it to go too much. Swans are the types to mug you. Geese are worse. Went to a bird preserve with my mom on Sunday. There's a water treatment plant, and they have a bunch of ponds, and so they essentially keep them good for wildlife. So it's a pretty nice place. Lots of different birds. Alrighty, so let's block this in and see if we like it, or if it might be too dark. But I can't judge that till I put a little bit of highlight on it, so we'll see how it looks. Remember, when you paint something black, you're kind of telling the eye to just ignore it. So, and it's slimming, right? That's why you'd wear a black bodice, because it's slimming. So it's a good color for a bodice in general. Like I said, it's not like this is a super important part of the model. So making it black will essentially make the eye focus more on this. So that's something to consider, right? I'm going to just paint right over all the laces. We'll go back in and make them a different color. Maybe blue. I'm thinking we'll repeat the blue on the laces of the bodice and the eyes, and we'll repeat the violet red up on the little braided crown on her head. We won't really have any more violet red than that since it is the kind of the brightest color on the model. I want it to stay up top. Yeah, geese are just attack animals. They're just like, I do not like them. All right, so that's really kind of actually brings her back toward rogue. If we start putting other dark colors on her like this brings her back in the rogue direction, which I like. If we'd gone with a color, she would be definitely looking like something else. Remember, this model is really versatile. She doesn't have to be a rogue. She could be a ranger. She could even be a level 1 wizard. Because, you know, you can and should have a light crossbow as a level 1 wizard or sorcerer. Because you have like 2 spells or 1 and then you're done. So it's nice to be able to shoot at things. Just throw food and run. My mom's side of the family were farmers, and I had a bad experience with geese when I was a child on the farm, so I've always disliked them since then. And a little bit of this bodice is coming out the bottom here, so you need to remember to hit that. I wanted to mention, since we were talking about neutrals earlier, that not all browns are really neutrals. If you look at a brown and it looks really reddish or really orange or really yellowy, then it is not really a neutral. It's pretending to be a neutral, but it's really kind of a lie. Because in reality, it's masquerading a neutral. It's another color masquerading as a neutral. So, for example, tanned leather from MSP Core 9031 is a yellow, and oiled leather and harvest brown 9110 and 9200 respectively are oranges, and ruddy leather 9109 is a red. Because if you can look at it and you see that it has a definite shift toward one of those colors, don't count that color as a neutral, not a real neutral. Yeah, I'm glad they get beat up, Kroniko. Alrighty, so we got black. We're gonna have brown belt. We're gonna do a brown on the crossbow. We'll just do a different brown. I think I could go gray with the crossbow, but I don't. That's not really resonating with me right now. I don't know. I might do the blue pants and then figure it out. But let's get this black nice and solid, and then we'll start adding highlights to it. Yeah, grays can have a lot of different colors in them. A lot of companies will put green or blue in their grays. And again, this is the same thing that I talk about with you guys that Sergio also talks about in his lessons and classes, where if you don't mix another color into your gray, if it's just black and white, it will read as very unnaturally flat, like an illustration, like a pencil drawing. It won't it won't look real, because when you're out wearing gray in nature, or you see something gray in nature, that gray's always got reflections of other colors on it. Blue from the sky, green from the grass, brown from ground. It's always got something else. And gray in nature is made usually by a mixture of cream, not white, but cream and black hairs. So usually there is a hint of warm color in there. So that's why both Sergio and I and many other painters never use just a neutral gray. I use cloudy gray a ton, but I always mix something into it. Always. Just a little bit. You don't want to make it not gray, but you want to make it not illustration. But yeah, there are also just grays for sale that have another color in them, and that's why they have another color in them. But I do appreciate the use of a true neutral gray, and then I can doctor it the way that I want to, which is why I use a lot of rainy gray and cloudy gray and misty gray, all of which are pure grays, because I like to add a spot of different color. I like to control it. So 2 coats will give us a nice solid black on her bodice. This is a very Renaissance fair bodice. I think it's cute. It's very cute. Alrighty. And she's got it in, it's got sections to it too, so we'll need to highlight those. All right, let's mix a highlight for our lovely black bodice. If we're doing leather, often I will go up with blue as opposed to cloth, where I tend to go highlight up with a brownish tone. And I never actually use gray for highlights. I always will take the color that I've got and mix a little bit of white or off-white into it. Do I have... Oh, I think all of my... Oh, maybe. That's misty. It's not quite blue. Let's mix a little bit of pure white in and see what I get. One of the things about mixing your own black is that it's sometimes fun to just put a drop of pure white in. Megusa. Yeah, that's pretty scary, Declareman. I would run. I would run from Megusa. More scary than snakes. I was not scared of snakes as a kid. I would pet a snake. The boys all decided I was boring because I was not scared. They couldn't scare me by, like, waving a garter snake in my face. So when we mix our black, like I did, remember this is a mix of blue liner and walnut. We get and then we throw some white into it. We kind of see that it's a little bit bluish, just like I thought it was over here. It's got a little bit of a cold tone to it. That's really nice. I actually like this a lot. So I think I'm going to use this for my first highlight. Rather than adding more blue, I'm just going to build it from the black that I mixed in the first place that had blue in it. And if I want to make it a little more blue, I probably would add one more drop of blue liner. So let's do that, because this is actually pretty different from that black. It's probably going to be a challenge to bring it up seamlessly. So I'll add one drop of blue, and actually I'm going to mix a little bit more of my pure black for touch-ups, or my non-pure pure black, which is 1-to-1 blue liner and walnut, of course. Because I want my regular black to stay good while I work, and I made a fairly small puddle of it to start with, so. It's good to be back home and be back in the routine, folks. I always joke that breakfast in new places takes me twice as long to make, because I'm all on autopilot when I make it here, and I'm like really efficient. Put me somewhere else, and I'm just like, ah. All right, so we've added some blue liner to that, which has promptly gotten all over the place. I'm going to add another drop of white. Because remember, these colors, they don't have any white in them, which means that when you start with making your first highlight and you're mixing white in, it's going to be really hard to hide brush strokes. So I added more blue liner. That's going to take us into a gray blue, a blue gray. See it? Now I don't want to go too blue because I want to make these pants blue. So I've got to be careful, but I also know that on leather, I'm going to keep my highlights very small and sharp, especially going up with black. When you highlight black, you need to make your highlights very small because otherwise you're going to overwhelm the surface with your grayish color or whatever you're using to highlight it. Hey, crows. And when you overwhelm the surface with gray, suddenly your bodice starts looking gray and not black. So I'm not too worried about going up with a bluish color on the bodice, even though the pants are blue, just because I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep my highlights very small. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and mix my next stages of highlight. That way I can work it all organically. Sometimes I like to do some wet blending on this with the black to make sure. And I do a lot of glazing with my initial black as well. One more drop of white. There. That will take it up a lot. Yeah, it's really pale. And this is more, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the Cold Stone triad with Icy Gray and Cold Stone Gray, which was very much a gray with blue in them, but unfortunately people didn't like them, so they got canceled. All right, so I'm going to start with this triad and see what I can do. We'll start with our blue. And I've thinned it quite a bit. You can see how thin it is coming off the side here, but it's still there. So we will leave brush strokes, even though it looks like this is a good layering consistency. It's really not. But I've decided with black, I tend to like to glaze to blend in stuff because I know how hard it is. Let's see if we can get, I know. Now that we've got a lot of black on this figure. So there's the highlight. Now you can see it really, how it doesn't blend in. But that's our highlight color. So I'm looking at how the light is coming and the parts of the bodice that are going to get hit. Mostly the top. There's a little bit of like texture going down the sides, but I'm going to leave it for a second. There's folds. This is kind of getting scrunched by the belt. I can bring that a little bit down. Now again, what we have to watch here is how much space this blue-gray takes up, because the minute you get so much in it, it starts to not look black. So I'm going to be watching that as I do this. And I may intentionally, at first, go a little bit broad with my gray, because I know I can always knock it back. I want to get the edges of the shoulder pads. A little bit of that interior of that neckline there. See the highlight going up the side. Gonna leave the laces because I'm gonna make them a different color. Come down on the bottom. I'm leaving almost all of this underside just black, except for there is a little bit of a fold here. It's there to match the one on the other side. Down here, I'm just going to do the edges at first. To give that small highlight. I'll put a little bit more in at the bottom corners because that part is coming out on her leg here, so that would pick up the light. On these little flaps, I'm mostly going to hit the edges and mostly toward the bottom of each of them. May do very slight edges going toward the top, but mostly toward the bottom. Now, two things are going to contribute to this continuing to look black. One is still leaving a lot of black on this area of this bodice, leaving a lot of pure black. You make your highlights much smaller. Second, the second thing that's going to contribute to this looking black is making sure that every other color on the model is lighter. You can get away with a lighter black, if all of your other colors are lighter than the color you're using as black. If you're using just a very dark color, like maybe Nightshade Purple, it'll read as black, absolutely. And also like Carbon Gray is another good one. Those will read as black if everything else on the model is lighter, because it's just they're very close to black, and so the eye will just think that they are black. All right, let's just do a quick stretch here. Haven't been in the painting chair for a while. Hey, to get reused to it. Might do a stretch. Yeah, black is also, as you point out, kind of a badass color, so going with black makes her look more serious. So that's another thing that colors, you know, and usually, as I mention to people, color identification and meaning varies by the culture, so you can't hit every cultural reference. But in general, if the people looking at your models are, you know, more from our Western society, then in general, black is going to make you look more morally ambiguous or more badass. And just going to make sure I've got that nice edge on the sleeve here and going up here. So I've got my first layer of highlight, and it's still pretty much looking black, pretty much. So that's good. And again, that's that color. It's a really dark blue-gray. So that is that's about where you want your first highlight for black if you're going to thin it down like I am. And now we're going to take this lighter color and we're really going to just kind of pop the highlights. And it's not white. It's not even close to white, but it's going to look very bright against this black. That little edge there. And this is the step where if I wanted to introduce texture, or if I was painting something where I could introduce texture, I would do it. And see, that going up the neck is too much. So I'm going to paint over it with my previous highlight. Kind of dim it down a little bit. See how much that highlight then picks it up more, makes it look lighter. We lose some of the feel of our black. So we have to be very careful. What that tells us is we need to be very careful with this lighter color. So really just going to pick up the edge highlight here. I'm going to pick up the edge highlight on the outer side of this. This isn't a great leather, as far as tutorials go, there's not a lot of specialty, you know, texturing or anything we're doing. We're just going to keep everything quite dark. You want that highlight along the edges to really pick up where things end and begin. Hello, Ultra Squid. A little bit of a touch down here. You can see how tiny I'm keeping these highlights. I really don't want everything to look too light. See, if you add a lot of light there, then everything starts looking lighter immediately. It doesn't look like black anymore. So there's lots of people who will just put a dark highlight on black and just leave it there. And don't want to really even get into going lighter with it. And the only reason to go lighter with it is if it's somewhat like got a sheen to it. And I decided I didn't want to go and make this like a suede or anything. And so I do want a little bit of a brighter highlight on it. If you were doing like a black suede, I would have probably stopped with the first highlight. I probably would have gone there. Maybe adjusted it as I got further into the model. But I think I'm going to start mixing a little bit of this highlight into my previous highlight. just to darken it down a little bit, keep it more under control. Because the thing about highlighting with a lighter color when you're dealing with a very dark color is that if you do not successfully convey the idea that it is a shinier surface, it will simply make the color look lighter. It won't look black anymore. So ask yourself, what is the surface that I'm trying to paint? What kind of texture does it have? Is it shiny? Is it just a little shiny, or is it really shiny, or is it not shiny? And the brightness of your highlights should reflect that. So we're getting dangerously close to not looking black. We're still looking black mostly. Now, one thing you can do is if you do highlight it up and you really like the look, but you're kind of lost the effect that it's black, you can glaze with your black over the whole bodice and knock things down a stage and then maybe hit one little tiny more highlight. I'm thinking this is going to be just fine once I get these pants up above, to a decent level. I think I'm going to start with Storm Chaser on them and see how it looks. But yeah, be very cautious with your highlights. A little bit of touch of a highlight at the outer edge here, because these shoulder pads are a separate piece. So if I put a little bit of highlight there, then that suggests that it's a separate piece. You see that? It's a real subtle little thing, but take it down a little bit more. There. Decent. All right, let's get the back here. A lot of this is in shadow, so that actually helps us quite a bit. Means we're going to do minimal highlighting on some of this area going down underneath. Pretty much I'm just going to grab my first highlight and kind of draw those lines in, see them? And kind of trail them off as it gets lower down to the belt. And then focus on making a highlight here, where I can see it comes out over her shoulder blades. And here again, how you drop this off is going to depend on how shiny your leather is. If your leather is duller, then there's going to be more transition, more of a soft transition from the highlight to the shadow. If your leather is shiny, it's going to go almost directly from highlight to shadow. And the more you do that, the sharper and shinier it's going to look. And I'm just going to do a little bit of brighter highlight here to bring this stuff out. And again, to make this. Now, should I put a highlight on top of the shoulder pad? I can, but I've got to be real timid about it because the shoulder pad is tiny. And if I go very far with the highlight, it's really going to lose the black look. This side, I'm just going to leave dark because her head is actually really leaned out over that. See how it really hits the light. This other one, though, isn't buried underneath her hair. And so I could go with more of a highlight. Now, there is kind of a line down the middle. So I could accentuate that and just do a line highlight, blend it in a little bit. That's probably the easiest way. Sometimes trying to put like realistic highlights and shadows on shoulder pads, like tiny little things like this is what makes 28mm very challenging. That's why sometimes if you struggle with the fine detail, switching up to a 54 or 72mm model may give you more room to work and relax and explore techniques, not having to cram them into tiny little surfaces. And it varies. Some people like the fact that you can very much simplify things on 28mm because they are so small. And some like having more room to work. So I always, as with all else that I recommend for you guys, try different things and see what really you enjoy, what seems to help you get better. Some people may be scared of trying a bust at first, but then once they get into painting it, the big surface areas make it so much easier to hit all the details that they end up really enjoying it and maybe doing some of their best work on it. And other people are much more, they're not afraid to like do like super high contrast, and the big areas of a bust just give them more room to mess up, or so they feel. And everybody will change at different stages in their painting. Like, you may start out being intimidated by busts, but then you get a little more confident with your blending and you realize, you want a little more room to work, to practice, and that works just fine. All right, so I've got that kind of a suggestion of a shiny cutoff there. Not terribly shiny though. I haven't brought up pure white, so this isn't reading as super shiny yet because I don't have that. If I want this leather to be really shiny, then I need that pop of pure white. If I don't have it, it won't look shiny, period. End of story. So I'm gonna get that line a little dulled down there. There, much better. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to bring in a pop of pure white and see what it does. No, you missed me making an absolute statement, which is rare. If you don't have a pure white pop on your highlight, something will not look shiny. Period. End of story. Or very close to pure white. You can use an off-white if it's the brightest thing. If you have pure white on your model, though, elsewhere, then you need that pure white. And I'll go 2-to-1 with that white. We'll try to put a little pop of white on there. See if we like it, and if not... Oh, did we freeze? It's you, Twisted Oma, I think. Let me see. I'm not getting any messages from OBS. No dropped frames, according to OBS. It might be lying, but you never know. All right, so I've got very little white. I have unloaded my brush a lot so that it comes to a really good point. But I need to ask myself where my light would really hit here. technically, if I was doing this super shiny leather, I would have to have a highlight. I would need to be painting NMM on this leather, by the way, which we have not really set up for. So instead, I'm just going to do a little bit of top highlight just to bring stuff out. Like, in reality, if I was doing this as super shiny leather, then the bust part would need to be, I'd need to put a hard highlight here on the, right at where it drops away, on the curve there. But I really don't want to do that. I think that would be distracting. So instead I'm doing 90s mini painting where we put just a little bit of touch of white here and there where it's semi-appropriate, which brings out all those shapes. I am going to underpaint these laces because I want to make them pink or blue. So let's see here. Oh, good. Time for coffee, huh? I did not have hardly any caffeine when I was in Arizona because my guts were upset at me for the first part of it. And boy, I missed my afternoon caffeine. That was rough. So one thing I can do here, which I didn't really pay attention to earlier, is the edges of the bodice here can be brought out more. I didn't see the details very well before, but once I get the laces in, I'm starting to see the details. So let's try to do that. Now it's going to mean bringing in more highlight, and then we're going to lose more of our black, and you're going to see how this shifts. Like, you can already see this kind of shifting away from black. So we'll have to do glazes. We'll have to glaze after. So we've got little... the area right around the laces where the leather ends and the laces cross over. And I've got to make sure I've got these laces kind of blocked in firmly. 25 months. Thank you, Trouble. Thank you for the resub. 1 month past the double subiversary. So I want to make sure I underpaint these laces firmly, because if I'm going to make them a color, the more solid I can underpaint them with white, the more that color is going to have a chance to show up. Oh, nice. Yeah, English breakfast is just a particular flavor of black tea. It's pretty, I think it's a specific blend, but I don't remember. I like Earl Grey because I like the bergamot flavor. So just kind of like coming over here, figuring out where the little ties are supposed to be and putting those little highlights in. So that brings that area, defines it a little bit. So if we were going to do really shiny, I would have to come out here and put that suggestion there, and that's very hard to make work. Kind of blend it in a little bit. We get more of a kind of metallic, but I still don't have under reflections here. So yeah, so if you want to make it shiny, you've got to essentially paint the bodice here like NMM, like black NMM, which is difficult, but we've managed to do kind of a shiny leather. I always feel that if you go more blue, your shiny leather is going to read better because it's reflecting skylight. So all right, that's not bad. I kind of like that. Now, one thing when you do highlight something up is you're going to see on a 28, if you didn't highlight the previous section as much, it may look odd. And in reality, you're just trying to make something read as a different surface, but then it looks a little bit weird because we didn't highlight the sleeves up as much, which is why the rule in the 90s was to highlight everything to white or near white, because then it looked right across the whole model. Whereas if her shirt's just a dull cotton, it wouldn't pick up the light like this does, and yet it still looks off just because our eye is looking for parity and it's looking for consistency. And texture is rarer to see portrayed at this stage. So that is the danger of trying to make something really shiny, and then you've got something else here, is I probably need to bring the highlights up on this, even if it wouldn't be strictly realistic, because otherwise it doesn't look right together. So that is, and this is something you wouldn't run into on a big model, like a bust. Shiny is shiny and texture is texture there, and I wouldn't have nearly this conflict. But because it's a 28, it has different rules. 28 millimeter is different rules from anything bigger. 54 millimeter kind of bridges the gap, but even 54s, you can do decent texture a lot more than you can on 28s. So what I'll do then is when I come back and do her headband with this violet red, I'll end up bringing my highlights up more on the sleeve to make it all read a little closer together. I don't want to bring it up very much because I don't want the shirt to be shiny, but that is something that I will have to do. Now, one thing I am going to do real quick is I'm going to undercoat this leg that I used as a demo on my other video. I'm going to undercoat it with gray so that I can go over both legs with blue and have it be the same color, because if I try to go with Storm Chaser blue and go over both of these, they will not look correct. So at least get these legs set up. And, you know, technically rainy gray is probably closer, but I have cloudy gray on my board here, so now that's pretty close. See? Cloudy gray is pretty close to Bones color. I don't need like a super solid layer either. I just want it to read correctly, so that both legs look the same when I start them. These pants have some nice detailing. They've got stitching on the sides, and the bottoms are kind of split just like the bodice. So that'll be kind of fun. And we'll just make sure we get everything coated over real quick. And then I'll use Storm Chaser. weird experiment to paint legs different colors, like black, like essentially because I'm dark and light. I actually did this on something else. It was the knoll. We did it on the knoll paw where I base coated one dark and one light and showed you guys the difference as far as highlighting it and how it stayed looking different after highlighting. So if you are interested in what would happen if I had kept that leg dark and tried to put Storm Chaser over both things, you can just go back and watch the knoll video where we did the one leg in more of a brownish, more natural green and the other one in more of a bright yellow green. And we did that by starting the base coat differently. So we really don't need to do the experiment on this model because we already can go and refer to that. Yep, the knoll demoed it, so we don't have to demo it again. We just have to defer to the knoll. Besides, I like the knoll. I want people to go watch this video. There, we'll just make this a little more solid. Fix any little blurfs that I did over here. Yeah. For things like that we did relatively recently, I'd rather just refer to the video we have that's existing. So as you can see, the cloudy gray is very similar to the base bones plastic. So I'm going to let that dry and mix up some of my Storm Chaser. Decided that I really like this blue. It's a little bit muted, so it should go with the rest of our colors. I'll bring it up with a slightly more saturated blue probably. Maybe Templar. We'll see. Fun, fun, Nomezik. It's always fun. Welcome to work, right? This is why I love what I do. Many reasons I love what I do. But I don't get paid the big bucks for it. So like if you have a mortgage and a family, yeah. Takes a while to build up a Patreon to that point. Alrighty. Let's see here. Do I have enough dry or do I need to? Yeah, I can do the other leg. So I'm going to thin this 4:1 to start. See how Storm Chaser does 4:1. This will be my first time ever base coating with this blue. You'd rather watch the paint dry. All right. Some blues are more transparent and some are more opaque. And so I'm taking a chance that this one's a little bit more opaque. Storm Chaser. So we'll start. Yeah, I think we're going to be okay on this. Start this here. Oh, I had a little bit of gray paint left. It's all right. Boop, 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 boop. There. With just a little bit of sculpting, this bag is round enough that you could paint it as a potion vial. If you wanted to, you could round it out more. And if you wanted to make this character more of a mage, you could do that. And you could probably manage to put a dagger on the belt through the arm here. There's enough room here. So you could like make her, you could strap one dagger here on the belt, and you could probably put another dagger sheathed on the leg with a strap if you were ready to sculpt a strap around it. And you could go more rogue that way, or if you wanted to do a mage, you could do just a dagger and make a potion bottle by doing a little bit of green work to take the folds out here and like just emphasize the roundness of this. I think that could work. And you could put a spell book maybe on this leg to turn her into a sorcerer. I think this model is very convertible to a lower level adventurer. I just, you'll run into problems when you're trying to figure out how to do the character at a higher level, although not really, because her head is very snip-offable. Hate to say that, but it's true. And because she's got this hair that comes down, you could snip off right around, like, her neck and just take off, like, you'd lose a little bit of the hair, but you actually want to because you can use that to sculpt it down or to hide the join, putting her head on a different model. Her face is great, and so it probably, if you could find a model that's the right scale, you probably could pop her onto like a wizard's body or something. You'd have to find the right scale of model. It might be a challenge, but I bet you could do it. If you wanted to make a Harefolk something else, if we don't have a lot of Harefolk. Although, given the popularity of this Harefolk, I would hope we would have a few others in the works. So that's actually a nice color combo. See how that blue is a good choice. It's not distracting. But it's good. It's a kind of a complementary almost to the brown, to places in the brown. Although this is a very yellow brown. So we've more got a red, blue, yellow color scheme going here. Yeah, if you use her as an alchemist, definitely you can. There's a couple of folds on the front here, but you could very much green that and emphasize the roundness of the pouch just by putting a skin of green stuff over it and put a little stopper in the top. And then you'd be able to paint it as a potion vial and it would be just fine. And then you could, in that case, you could even like put maybe another vial over here on her other hip. But yeah, I think this model has, because she's simple, it's easier to convert her. Models that have a lot of complicated stuff going on are very hard to convert. But it's not hard to sculpt like a spell book, so that's doable. Or if you want to do the alchemist thing, then that is also doable. It's a bit of work, but I think you could probably make it work pretty well. All right, so let's see. I'm letting this dry a bit before I throw another coat on it. But I'm liking this blue a lot. I did say we would do her eyes, and I think we've got enough time. We got 10 minutes. So I want a bright blue. Very bright. Maybe cyan. Cyan with a little white in it. Let's see. That's ultramarine. I don't want ultramarine. There's cyan blue. Whenever I have to do a lighter, brighter blue, I like to start with cyan. It's got a little more coverage than clear blue. It's a tad lighter, a tad warmer. So I'm going to get some of that out. It's very blue. I'm going to add just a tad of white to it. It's got to stay pretty blue, though, to convey the color. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like that. So the color I mixed is very bright blue, like that. We'll see how it carries when it's on her eyeball. But I want to make a dark rim around the eye first, so I'm going to fill in with Storm Chaser first. Whenever you're doing, this model has eyes that are big enough, I think, to do a colored iris, so we're going to try. Yeah, I like the crossbow though, and for a spellcaster, you want, I mean, every low-level spellcaster I play these days has a light crossbow, because you can, and you have so few spells that to be useful at all, you must have one. So, you can make her a ranger just by putting, like, a quiver of bolts across her back, and I think she would make a great ranger. Very late, Pendrake. We're almost done. I started on time for once, almost. But yeah, I think this model is very convertible. You could do a staff if you wanted a wizard. You could clip off the top of the crossbow. It'd be harder because her thumb goes through the middle. Yeah, I think keeping the crossbow is the best option. And for a starting character, I think you're okay. Well, let's do the eyeball. Yeah, but I would avoid cutting off the crossbow or transforming it because you've got this to deal with. Makes it a lot harder. And it's also like tucked up against her. So it's just a very difficult convert at that point to make it look good. It's much easier when you're converting. Look for how to make it easy for yourself. Look for like clean areas that wouldn't take a lot of fiddling and burrowing out. I mean, you could do it if you're really into it. You can do it, but it'll be a lot more work to make it look good. I think she'd be a great ranger because she's very homespun. Like a lot of her stuff is coming off as very country to me, very handmade. And you could totally do like flowers or leaves hanging from her headband to give her more of a druid or ranger kind of feel. Honestly, as far as putting anything, this is easiest to cut off. To cut off the bag and just make a hilt of a dagger or some other weapon coming here, that would be easy. It's much easier than doing the crossbow. So yeah, you could make her, I can see her as a druid, I can see her as a ranger, I can see her as a low-level mage or sorcerer, or wizard, pretty easy conversions. I can see her as an alchemist because of the option of turning this into a potion bottle because of how it's sculpted. So yeah, lots of different possible class ideas for this, just with a little bit of conversion work and a little bit of sculpted add-ons. Heck, if you've got those tiny like leaves or flowers, the paper ones or stuff like that, you probably could just like have them put those right attached to this with some glue and you'd be there. You wouldn't even need to really convert for that. So, and then, you paint her in the colors of the character class that you want. And maybe if you want a ranger, like you could add camo. Yeah, maybe you could do it. I mean, that would be a little harder. It wouldn't be too hard though. You'd scrape off the laces and resculpt. Yeah, if you're not afraid of green work, you could do it. You could make her a fighter, but then I definitely would put a sword in her offhand or something like that. Like I would have her like holding the scabbard at the very least. You cut off that, put a scabbard there, so she's holding the scabbard like she's maybe going to draw her blade. Your hilt's going to get in the way a little bit, but not too much if you make it short. So yeah, you could go low-level fighter with her. Maybe not as good as a low-level fighter. I might make her shoulder pads a little bit more in that case. Oh, thanks, Moonlight. I'm glad you like her. Yeah, I wanted a naturalistic hair, and so I looked up pictures of a hair, and we did the color patterns in accordance. And now we're going to do the blue eyes. Let's get that going. So I'm going to put them in with dark blue, because if you're going to do a colored iris on a small model, and even on a big model, most of our eyes have a dark rim. It makes them stand out, so it's a reason to do it for minis. Once again, when you're going to paint very small things like this that you have to precisely place, paint on the exhale or exhale and then hold your breath. Never hold your breath at the beginning of the painting. It will make you shake. I'm going to start with just a dot in the middle of each eye, and then I'm going to tune her expression. by making those, adjusting those irises that I've got once I've got them placed decently. That one needs to go a little bit more here. That way, if you start with just a tiny dot, you can enlarge the dot in one direction or the other to make the eyes look the right way, to look the same way. I think this is the only one we were talking about at Pendrake that maybe there would be others. Chainmail is harder. I mean, if you can sculpt, then sure, chainmail, Robin, but I was thinking of easy conversion ideas for the most part for people. Then again, if you're trying to get better at green work, chainmail really isn't that hard. But it's pretty easy to build a bigger shoulder pad off of the existing shoulder pad. And in that case, these little shoulder flaps just become an armature for bigger armor. So it would be pretty easy, actually, to make her a low-level fighter. All right, so I like the direction of the eye. This eye's big enough now, I think. This eye needs to be bigger. And these eyes are happily sculpted large enough. Now I need a little bit more on the interior. These eyes are sculpted large enough where I figure that they'll work. I want to have her looking a little bit off, like she's heard something, and that's why she's grabbing her pouch. So she could be about to go for a spell component, or she could be about to go, hey, I need to hold on to my purse because there's a pickpocket in that alley. So I want to make this big enough. In order to do colored irises on a 28mm model, the eye needs to be big enough for you to do all of this work that we're about to do. So I'm making the irises really big. She is an animal, so we can get away with making a very large iris indeed. Making the irises larger also tends to go for a friendlier look for a character. There we go. That's pretty good. So now I'm going to take the white. I'm going to fill in what I just did, all with white. Oh, good. Nice. Yeah, for Easter. Makes sense, right? To have a bunny for Easter. So now, I'm going to fill that in and try to leave that dark rim around it. I might not be able to quite get a pupil in here. We'll see. These are very 28mm doing colored irises I normally would not do, but this is an opportunity because these eyes I think are just big enough, but it's not for the faint of heart. All right, so filling in, leaving a little bit of a dark border. You want that white because you want this blue to be really bright over it. All right, I think I've got it. Grabbing my cyan blue plus white, and we'll see how it goes. That's very bright blue. Good. This may work. We'll see. So very bright blue eyes. Now, I need black, and I've got black, mixed up black from earlier. So let's try to do a tiny pupil in the middle of this iris. without screwing it up. So go from underneath. You want to use the top of the eye, the eyelid, to stop your brush. Pupil on that one eye. Lost a little bit of my rim there. I might go back and see if I can hit it. Remember, I always inhale and then exhale when I'm actually painting. That one got a little bit out of control. I'm going to try to scrub it. Yeah, I can scrub it. Always remember that if you place it wrong, just quickly rinse out your brush, take some water, scrub off the mistake, and go back. You can train it, Pendrake. I have squinty eyes. I use magnification for that reason. I am also, notice, bracing both my hands on the desk and also bracing them against each other, which immediately will counteract shaking, or if you're shaking, you will at least shake in the same direction, as you can see with my hands here. After that, it's practice. Remember that muscle memory will overcome a lot of problems. And also I feel like I lost some of my blue on that when I scrubbed. So I'm going to actually bring the blue back in before I do this pupil again. However, and a straight answer, if you are that wobbly of brush and that bad at eyes, then don't do colored irises on this model. Just use just do the pupil. You should be able to do it. The half the battle isn't how wobbly your brush is or any of that. It's how much paint you have on it. If you have less paint on your brush, then at least when you do lay down a dot, it's going to be precise and not like flow all over the place. And after that, like I said, muscle memory. Muscle memory can do a lot for you. This is why it's important to practice. This is why I always tell people to buy a faceless horror. And there we go. That's looking good. When you buy a faceless horror, you'll have all sorts of eyeballs to practice on. And that's when you really got to remember that always use the same stance when you're doing detail. Always use rest your hands in a particular way, brace your hand in a particular way, hold the brush in a particular way, and practice consistently. Now I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try to go for this catch light in the eye because I've got everything else. And I'm going to thicken up my white for that because I need it to be a very small spot. But I need it to be strong. But I still need it thin enough to come off the brush. So we're probably going up to about a 3-to-1 here. Yeah, it's like a 6-to-2, so 3-to-1 with the pure white should give me more than a strong enough. Oh, and then we got to end because, boy, we're gone over. Oh, well. Hey, I lost time, so let me make up a little time. All right, again, very little paint on the brush. Unload your brush. Brush with a very good tip. Paint on the exhale. Oh, tiny little highlight. Damn. Can you even see that? Almost. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, my camera, you can almost see it. See the little tiny highlight in the middle of the pupil. Sometimes I nail it and I'm like, ooh. Then I screw up the other one. That's actually a much smaller catch light than I wanted though, so I may go back. Yeah, that's decent. That one's pretty wicked. That one's okay. Yeah, there we go. still feel like that one needs to be bigger. I'm going to try it. I'll probably screw up the awesome thing I did, but this happens. You just take the chance or you don't. There we go, much more. And I want to emphasize the outer rim of that eye because I lost that dark rim. And when you do that, the eye kind of runs together. You can see it. So I'm actually going to mix my Storm Chaser blue with a little bit of my black mix because I want a really thin line. I want to paint in the edge of that iris again. And that defines the eye again. Check this side, but I think I'm pretty good on this side. Yeah, I am. There we are. So she's definitely heard something and she's like turning her head and looking toward it. I'm going to maybe narrow this eye a little bit on the inner edge. There we go. When you've got side-mounted eyes like this, where a hare definitely, she has, her eyes are definitely mounted more on the sides of her head, which is what, you know, would be proper for a hare. Got to work a little bit sometimes to make the eyes turn that way or get the appearance of that. You don't want to leave too much white at the inner corner or it's not going to look like she's looking this way. Now she looks like she's listening with the way her ears are cocked, which I really, really like. Like she's heard something and she's like listening for it. So I like that a lot. So next time we'll probably do, we'll pick up that violet red again and we'll rock that up on the hair tie and we'll bring up the shirt a bit. And maybe block in some other stuff, maybe start blue on the pants. We'll see. But she's coming along. And we did the eyes. And I'm pretty happy with them. So, actually she is better with this behind her. So she's coming along now. Yeah, definitely sassy. Well, with that kind of tilt of your ear, if you had that tilt of your ears, you'd be sassy too. But yeah, she looks like she might be slightly dangerous now, and I like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed today. What we did is we did an underpainting thing with the pants so that they would look similar legs. We did the black leather on the bodice. We talked a lot about highlights, about contrast, about light, dark contrast, color choices, all the rest of it back at the beginning. So if you're interested, we talked about various ways to convert this figure to be different starter character classes. For those of you who really like the Harefolk and want to maybe, you could just, honestly, you could just take the elves in your, if you don't have animal people in your D&D world, you could just like take the elf prototype and just slap a Harefolk on it and change it up a little bit or something like that. Or even dwarves, since they are earthy, right? Rabbits. So that would be fun. But yeah, that would be kind of fun to run a D&D game where you take all the classic races, but you replace them with animal people. So maybe the orcs get to be like bear people or something, you know, and the elves get to be like rabbit people or something, or fox people, and you could do some fun stuff with that actually if you like that sort of thing. Yeah, Crow's Nest, another sculpting stream. How is Proctor doing? Is he doing well? Is Weeby heckling him adequate amounts? I hope so. But I need to go shopping and restock the refrigerator from, Bachelor Weekend. So I hope you all have a great day. And tomorrow we will be working on, actually we're almost done. We need to, I think I said we would maybe work on some basing for Ogre. Because he's definitely, looking good. He's looking really good. And I'm feeling like maybe it's time to work on his spacing. Yes and yes, good. We're heckling him adequately, and he's doing well. That's the best possible outcome. All right, you guys, we'll be back tomorrow with Ogre. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye-bye.